Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves. I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Welcome to our first event of 2020. We couldn't think of another or a better way to kick off the year than with not only a book launch, but also a wonderful musical performance from somebody who we are enormously fond of. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about our guest of honor in just a second. For right now, I'd just like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is here in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Ninawa, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Brewster. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate the launch of Scott Nolan's Man on a Wheel, a tribute to Patrick O'Connell. We have an evening of performance and conversation ahead, and I'm the least interesting person on stage, so I'll turn things over to the good folks in just a moment. We'll be featuring Scott, Cory Wolchuk on piano, and host Catherine Hunter. We're so grateful to Signature Editions for publishing this book, of course, and for helping to make this evening a possibility. I'll be back at the end of the event to go over some signing procedure to let you know how you can get a copy of this beautiful book. But for now, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's host. Catherine Hunter is a Winnipeg poet and novelist. She is a devoted fan of the work of both Patrick O'Connell and Scott Nolan, and she wrote the introduction to the book we're launching tonight. Please join me in being a very warm welcome to Catherine Hunter.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. It's my, I should talk into, can you hear me? I'm used to doing my own. Don't cause trouble. Okay. So it's a real pleasure for me to introduce tonight, Scott Nolan. And I would also like to introduce Cory Wolchuk, but Scott wanted to do that. So I'll just introduce Scott. Scott Nolan is a songwriter, a multi-instrumentalist, and a poet from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Treaty 1 territory. His debut poetry collection was titled Moon Was a Feather, and it was a finalist for the Eileen McTavish Sykes Award for Best First Book. So even though he had already put out numerous albums, that was his first. His albums include The Suburb Beautiful, Before Tonight, Silver Hill, there's no favorite, North South, Postcards, No Bourbon and Bad Radio, Receiver Reflector, American Hotel, and Canadian Amplifier. His songs have been recorded by Hayes Carl, Mary Gauthier, Watermelon Slim, and Corin Raymond, among others. After more than a decade of relentless touring, Scott decided to take some time away from the road to collaborate, produce records, and enjoy life, and has since produced albums for William Prince, Stephen Fearing, Lynn Hanson, and Watermelon Slim. So to start us off, Scott and Cory are going to play some of the songs that were inspired by the poetry of Patrick O'Connell, and as part of this tribute that Scott has created in memory of Patrick. And looking out at the crowd, I see quite a few people who were friends with Patrick and who knew Patrick. So I'm going to let them do that. And then afterwards, we'll have a bit of a conversation and you guys can ask questions. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes. I didn't necessarily insist upon introducing Cory. Outside of family, he's probably the friend I have the most history with, really, maybe in the world. We met in grade 4, and I've said before, the secret to our longevity of friendship is we didn't talk for about 25 years. But when we reconnected as friends, it was Cory's midlife crisis, if you will, was to learn how to play the piano. And he'd asked me if I could help him using my songs, if I could teach him my songs on the piano. And so here we are. A handful of years later, he's my piano player. And, I warned him about that dream. He stopped cutting his hair. His wife left. I said, "You're a musician now, my friend." to diamonds. I'll open myself, I surrender. Isn't this what it all was in preparation for? Love and dying. Mm. All night I listen to the thunder, for the earth is a broken bell. And I took 3 pebbles in my hand, I shook them like a rattle. Someday your bones will sound like that. See how the sky is a horse on fire. As the night sails blue along, songs of a heart, seas and tiny voices echo, hoping for angels, hoping for angels. How I came to know faith is silence. How under each star blue sky burns. In dreams the sleepy ships arise and fall upon the ocean. Over and over. See how the sky is a horse on fire. As the night sails blue and alone, songs of the heart, seas and tiny voices echo, hoping for angels. See how the sky is a horse on fire. As the night sails blue along, songs of the heart, seas and tiny voices echo, hoping for angels. Hoping for angels. Hoping for angels. Hoping for angels. Thanks, everybody. You can hear us okay? Don't tell him that. What, Cory? I'd like to say that this book is one of my favorite things that I've got to produce in my career for a bunch of reasons. But the first reason, I think, is my publisher, Karen Hunter. She conceived of this book. The whole thing, the layout, the design, was all her idea. And at first, I didn't know if I saw a book. And so it was Karen that saw the book. The recording, the 8 songs in the back of the book comes with a CD. I recorded those almost 20 years ago, and they sat on a hard drive for at least 15 years. I never expected them necessarily to get to see the light of day. So I'm very grateful that Karen heard this and saw this and put such incredible energy into making it this beautiful book. Catherine Hunter's introduction to me is the centerpiece. She knew Patrick quite well, even much before I did. And I really feel like she perfectly captured what friendship was. I was 20, just learning to write songs. And this man had lines like, see how the sky is a horse on fire. As the night sails blue and alone. And I was 20 years old thinking, oh my God, this is some of the best writing I've ever heard. And so it really set a bar and a template for me. And there was other really important lessons, but we'll talk more about those later. I'm going to try not to talk too much so I can save it for my conversation and just get to the songs. Okay. My mom says I'm a jabberjaws. This is a song from the book called November Tree. Just let it go. Like every lover would. To press my body to the tortured earth. And after this small prayer, I love to see her in her wings, with all that tumbling hair. And over in the tree in my backyard, it bears 2 yellow leaves, and someone's white scarf just blowing in the breeze. Like me and the painted clown, he says he's too tired to cry. The blue and blues of it, somewhere a river shines. For all the diamonds and dust in old Market Square, we're the only ones there. Mamacita, we in the clover now. Will you sway me in your arms? Oh, wind up, you wind up, boy. Maybe at the end of September, when all the leaves are turned to gold, and I untie your bows as we let the night unfold. So sing to me the bluebirds farm, we have our star in bloom. The sweetest thing I've ever done is just lay down with you. So I sing the body blue and black, humble-bee and hammerjack. The chant of the river's flow, you can kiss me as I go. I can read the writing on the wall, and the lightning lights the room. Just thrive and sway, I say, like all God's children do. For all the diamonds and dust in old Market Square, we're the only ones there. Mamacita, mamacita, we in the clover now. You sway me in your arms, or wind up, you wind up, boy. You wind up, boy. Stop. I stopped doing those for a really long time, and when I started again, I started doing gigs with my childhood pal and I developed a real anxiety over the years. Funny thing about when Cory joined me was there was no bad gigs. We could be playing like an old folks home to 8 people, and Cory will turn to me and go, "Man, what a life you have here." And, it's really helped remind me of the important stuff, quite truthfully. It's never a gig that he's not really, really excited about, and I appreciate that about him. Into the brick of bracken bramble, shrouded streets and lordly men, passed down the light and empty halls. I dreamt I ran homeless again, to the grip of wild wackos, drunk on our own bathtub gin. Like every motherless child, I too was born on the wind. I am one of the chosen ones, because I choose to be. There I go as usual, falling on my knees. The trees are blowing silver, though sometimes it seems like a seabird searching for a cliff. There was a rip in me, sad to see the sun go. For more things fall from the heavens than the rain falling in place. I'll renounce the fantasy, every smoky dream, pluck the splinter from my heart and stitch up the seam. I'll say I'm here for the long haul. I'll play my part upon this page. Die for you, will climb the light to rise again and thrive and sway. Sad to see the summer go. From all things fall from the heavens and the rain falling in place. All things fall from the heavens and the rain falling in place. Still falling. These songs have become funny little gifts to me all these years later. The first song, Hoping for Angels, it's almost always the first song Cory and I do, and something about it allows me to slow my breathing, and it allows me to reach down for these low notes that are only achievable when you're relaxed. And I also find it somehow has that effect on the audience sometimes. And one of the most standout occasions was we played the Burton Cummings Theater opening for the Mavericks for their 30th anniversary. And the Mavericks are a very lively, kind of fun band. And I remember that being our first song, Hoping for Angels. And it felt like the roof of the theater could cave in. it really was a powerful moment, and I feel like it's because my friend is giving me momentary superpowers of confidence and comfort, and the ability to believe in the song, because in a manner of speaking, it's not just a Scott Nolan song, it's a Patrick O'Connell poem, and it kind of gives me this license that I didn't maybe feel like I had otherwise. And here's one that we really never get to play, but it's maybe I think it was the first one I ever wrote. And this, all of them are cannibalized and collaged together. But this is basically a poem I put to music. I did very, very little to the lyrics here. And it's one of my favorites. It's called Somewhere in Your Vagina. Why don't you turn up just a little touch there? How once you lay in a wheat field with a long forgotten mate, a warm August earth, as waves of a gold ocean rolled over you. Somewhere in China, a white horse in a wind-blown night field, neighing at a turquoise moon. This is a memory. This is your memory. Somewhere in China, walking free while rings of fire around a stubble field, smoke in the skies. Somewhere near China, somewhere near China. Later the dance hall, drinking outside in the truck, the sweet scent of the stubble in her hair. Somewhere in China, somewhere in China, somewhere in China. Somewhere in China. Somewhere in China. Somewhere in China. Well, then I half hour now, maybe we should move to the competition pose. I think that's probably a safest bet. That's half the CD there we just covered. You want to come join us?
Oh, yeah, right.
I met Catherine Hunter at Patrick's Memorial, as a matter of fact. I'm not sure if she remembers that. I didn't know it was silent, but that'd be okay.
So, yeah, I definitely remember the memorial for sure, of course. So that was 2005.
That's right. First time I ever played piano in public. There was a piano in the basement of that church. In the moment, I thought, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna play this on the piano. Seemed like something Patrick would like.
Yeah, he would love this.
I think he would have liked it if I did it in a dress, probably, with my hair standing up. I like to think that he would like this. I feel pretty confident that he would.
I feel pretty confident that I know him well enough that he would love this project. So as you can see, I think it's real thing. I don't know, I'm not worried about other things to it.
No, you know me, I'm like a bulldozer, yeah, wind up boy, that's exactly right. Every gig I drive to, no matter where it is, no matter what, I drive there and think, what am I gonna say tonight? What am I gonna talk about? And then, good grief.
I can't wait to find out.
You can't shut me out.
Can't wait to find out what I'm gonna say. So there's so many aspects to this project. This is like three, I don't want to call them, thank you.
You should talk really close.
Thanks, Karen. All right, how's that? Is that better? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Should have listened to Glenn back there in the first place. So, okay. So there is, this project has like visual art, poetry and music all mixed in together. And I think that, you know, definitely, well, Scott sort of mentioned this, but that the collage technique that he uses in his visual art is also, he has applied to the poetry of Patrick O'Connell, taking lines from here and there and then juxtapose, you know, changing the juxtaposition, right? So taking a line and then putting it in a different context. But you do a very faithful job of keeping an individual poem together. I think there's only one or two instances I noticed where there's more, where there's a different poem mixed in. Yeah.
I tried to stick in. I mean, at the time it felt like I didn't really have any thing to look at. I heard people put people's poems to music. I heard different things, but I didn't have anything to look at for this. Because after Somewhere Near Regina, I realized I'm never gonna be able to do that twice.
Right.
It was just a bit of a very lucky. And this was before I'd ever done a single collage in my life, so I didn't realize at the time that it was exactly what was happening. It's kind of, and the man on a wheel thing, which was also Karen Hines' suggestion of title, speaks to so much about my life right now. 20 years after Patrick's gone, you know, so these lessons really reverberate in an interesting way with me. I'm still kind of still thinking of things I learned from just kind of being around him.
Well, when I think about Man on a Wheel and a lot of Patrick's poetry, I think of the Buddhist traditions that he studied and practiced. And I mean, some days more than others, right?
He's the only person that ever told me he was a Buddhist outside of actual Buddhism. I believe them though. Because sometimes people go, I'm a Buddhist, and I go, okay, I'm right. But Patrick actually really lived like a Buddhist. And his face, he looked like a Buddhist, like he had that Buddha. He could look 5 years old, no matter what condition he was in. You'd look at him and he'd smile and he'd, oh my God, he looks like a little boy. Yeah, he did have that kind of innocent way about him sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I would say, I don't know if he had said anyway, he did some Buddhist practices, right? Yeah. And he understood. So when I think about being on the wheel, I think about that as, you know, our existence that we're on, right. And that it's painful and it's, you know, it's full of suffering, and then eventually we'll get off it, right? Yeah. And some people believe that, you know, no, you'll be reincarnated, well, from the Hindu tradition, right? You'll be reincarnated and then you're on the wheel again, right? Round you go. So in the Buddhist tradition, you try to sort of get off that, yes, and get away from it.
And so he talked about that a lot, but the way he talked about suffering also was in a very beautiful way sometimes. There's always, you know, I actually shouldn't start at the end, but the very last words in the book are three hands, but this is the verse in the last one. And we were just two fragments there, remnants from some hungry house, while the hands of the plaster savior caught the rain. And all kinds of Catholic imagery in there too, as well as the Buddhist imagery. But, you know, I just wanted to comment that, isn't there always some kind of consolation, right? Like he talks about a lot of pain and desperation.
He was the king of consolation.
Yeah, would you say that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was one of the best gift givers I'd ever known. And this is a man that, you know, in between being in and out of the hospital, mental health breakdowns, he lived, you know, in the core area in kind of subsidized living. But yet, like one time he gave me this, it was a tiny little stained glass James Joyce in a little wooden frame. And you wondered, where the heck did he find this thing? But he did find it somewhere, he kept it tucked away. And he thought enough of things to go, oh, this is perfect for him. So these little, he could make the tiniest things seem enormous somehow, you know, having so little, that he was quite generous that way. I was always surprised by his gifts, you know.
Honestly, I just have to say this, now you remind me of it. And I also stuck this in a poem one time. So Patrick gave me this little stone, sort of a white, looks like a white quartz type stone. And it's an elephant carving. It's carving of an elephant. And in the middle of the elephant, there's this huge hole where the belly is, right? And so Patrick was telling me what he thought that meant, you know, symbolically, right? This, and I'm like, I didn't say this, but that's a napkin ring. Is what,
That is the essence of Patrick, though, I think. I talked about him so much at my gigs that, so there was a band called Urban Gorilla that played a lot in the Woolsey neighborhood. I talked about Patrick's poetry with such revere that they invited him to front their band. And I ran into these guys. They said, oh, you know, we had your friend front our band. He showed up to the Bella Vista. No, it's not that terrible, exactly. He showed up to the Bella Vista in a kilt. And they did the first set, he recited poetry over this kind of jazz band. And then according to the Urban Gorilla guys, in the second set, he began exposing himself to people. And I mean, I remember telling them, I didn't tell you guys to like have him join your band. I knew this other guy who was a cab driver, Pete and Jack and Little Pete, and they moved him in their home. And one day they showed up at my Bella Vista gig and said, you know, Scott, your friend gets up in the middle of the night, he puts water on to boil, he lights a cigarette and he falls asleep every night. And I said, geez, I said he was an incredible poet. I didn't tell you to move him in your house. You know? And so the reality began to kind of unfold, the more complicated sides, but even in those complicated moments, there was still always such a sweetness, you know, such a curiosity and
an amazing creativity.
Yeah, it was stunning to be a young guy starting and to have this example put in front of me was like winning the lottery in the artistic terms, because it taught me so much. One, it taught me a relationship between mental well-being and creativity. It led me to this concept of the opposite of depression is expression. And from my adolescence, which was very kind of difficult, I had my own struggles with alcohol and drugs. In fact, I kind of arrived in the world like a hand grenade. And I've gone from a man on fire to a man on a wheel. I'm growing into myself. But to meet this man at 20 and see all these things happening at once, to realize, you know, they were reading his work in the House of Commons, where people would pass by him on the street and knock through $1 in his guitar case. This was the reality I was learning at 20. You know, there's the art world here, and then there's the art world here. And it's informed me, and it's also, it illuminated, between my cousin and Patrick, two Irish writers named Patrick, it really illuminated for me that music kind of saved my life as a kid. And like Patrick, it doesn't owe me anything. Everything really really important from this, we already got, you
Yeah.
know, and for instance, you know, he'd wake you up all the time, just like me, with, can I read you a poem? It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Scott, can I read you a poem? And you know what? You rolled over in bed and you were eager to hear it. And what that poem would do for him for the rest of the day was like floating. And then I watched him suffer medical indifference. Let's try all these drugs. And he goes from like superhero state to complete breakdown, and nothing works. And then the poems. And I was 20 years old watching this going, wow, this is a heck of an education to be offered. I could have still been in debt trying to pay off my university degree, or I could have happened into Patrick at the time of my life that I did. And like I say, I think about him a lot still. It informs me when I'm feeling sorry for myself or thinking my career should be this, it should be that. It's like, I don't have any control over those things any more than he did.
No, that's true. And he was, you know, there's actually, you know, he actually was very ill, right? So, I mean, we're joking around about his personality and everything, but you know, he had a great sense of humor. And even in his poetry, sometimes he wrote about his own suffering and illness and his poverty in a very humorous way.
I'd used up all my sick days, so I called him dead.
Yeah.
I spent the afternoon on a pogo stick bouncing on bent dimes. I dreamt I went homeless again, mashing my potatoes on the sidewalk. God, are you kidding? My mom, this is in the book, and I love that my mom gets mentioned in the book. She means so much to me. And she came up once, he opened a gig of mine, and she came up to me and said, where does this man come up with such imagery? And the thing she was remarking on was, I don't even know if it's a published line, where he was talking about how if he stands and tilts his head just right, he could chase the moon down chimneys. And I remember seeing my mom be moved by something like that, and it really, you know, affecting me, because it excited me to see my mom curious about something like that. And why would he come up with such a thing? And immediately I thought he was probably off his meds in his house coat on Ellis in the middle of the night, smoking a little home-rolled cigarette and standing there. I've seen him do it, you know. And again, I learned from this stuff, where it's like those moments are significant moments. If you're,
well, the whole day is full of poetry.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you've got your eyes open, and so he's noticing all of this. He's not going like, oh, I gotta, you know, get in my Cadillac and get to work. Like, do people
being available full time. That's all it is.
Yeah, and I think living the world in that way. And there's another one I really like, which is these days I'm living a life of contemplation, meditation, and poverty. So far, the poverty part is doing really good. He was amazing, the way he looked at things, right? Like he had a very original take on things, and then he was so attuned to, I think we've talked about this a lot, the image, right? And you're just talking about that moon going down the chimney. And by the way, I looked, I can't find it in any of the published books.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I should have kept it to myself. You know, it's because it was life or death. And a nicer way to say that maybe is it's either everything or nothing. Sometimes with people, and Patrick and I shared that. It's everything. This is our spirituality. This is our church. This is where our concept of creator comes from. Because you know, I'll walk outside and look at the sky and think, thank God I never did that. In fact, not even close. The other day, it was kind of just a slight gray blue, and I remember looking at the sky thinking, there's like a bazillion shades of gray here. It's really, you know. Or I was walking home from the grocery store, and there was a folded Jack of Hearts, folded like a tent, just lying there on the sidewalk. And I was like, you know, I agree. Art is, you're really, when you're doing it right, in my estimation, you're just paying homage to something that's way beyond your. Beyond you.
And I just want to say that, you know, what Van Gogh was doing when he painted those skies, he was trying to show that to us, right? He wanted to, I remember in one of his letters, I think to his brother, he said, I want to go and, I have to go now and do this drawing because I want to show you what
Yeah.
you know, what he was seeing out the window, right? Yeah.
Someone else that was in it for their health. It was a life-sustaining mechanism, this practice. And Van Gogh said something else that I really love. You know, nobody cared about what he did when he was alive. I think he sold one painting in his whole life, and his brother was an art dealer. And he famously said, maybe I'm making paintings for people that aren't born yet. He was untroubled by the celebrity element. He was untroubled by the adulation. And I think he recognized this is a life-saving mechanism for me. If I don't express this, it becomes depression.
Yeah.
And from there, you're kind of swallowed up by it. And I mentioned my cousin, you know, prior to Patrick O'Connell, like literally months before we met. My cousin died in 2000, but we used to talk a fair bit on the phone, and he was doing a life sentence in Folsom Prison in California. And when there's violence or disruption during a prison phone call, the phone just goes completely dead. And it warns you if this is an audio recording, so this call could be la la la. And so we were used to this over years of talking. And we talked again through letters, but the last time we ever spoke on the phone, my cousin said to me, this is almost exactly how I remember it. He said, you know, if I had to do it again, I'd be a bum poet. I'd spend my day in the park, and I'd just really try to appreciate the simple things in life and concentrate on my writing. And then the phone call goes dead. It was 1996, and it was the largest race ride in Folsom Prison's history. And that's what caused our phone call to be suddenly cut off. And a couple months later, I was working the Blue Note Cafe on Portage Avenue, and there was nobody in the restaurant. And Patrick O'Connell came walking in wearing a poncho. And he was a bit heavy set in this area, and kind of disheveled, looked rough, you know, and there was nobody there. The cook back then was a friend of mine named Corby Pierce. And I stuck my head in the kitchen and I said, hey, would you make a dinner for this fella? And I took him to dinner, we chatted. He came back a couple days later with a border crossing magazine, never mentioned that he was a writer. And I thanked him. I said, oh, geez, you didn't need to do that. Very thoughtful. You know, my first experience of what a thoughtful guy Patrick was. He left, and I was flipping through the magazine, and there's this feature inside in the middle of the magazine on him. And then when I met you at his memorial, I met this young guy after I performed. And I'll never forget, the young guy came up to me and said, Patrick was my AA sponsor. And I play guitar, I sing, I write poems, I play the drums. I would have loved to have had this to talk to him about. He never told me he was a poet. Isn't that funny? Because if you know Patrick in his element, there's no kind of turning him off. He's excited to talk about his art. But when he's suddenly in service to something, he just shuts it right off. And my first meeting with him was very much like what that young man described. Again, it's like there was a wisdom there.
Yeah, so he understood that wasn't about him.
No, it was actually a thank you. It was really a thank you. And it kicked off an incredible friendship. And I introduced other friends that became very close to him. You know, my friend Lance McMaster helped me make that CD. He did a lot of the engineering, and like he moved Patrick 2 or 3 times that I can remember. Like Terry, you know, I got him a futon one time because his bed was kind of, you know, and like we loved it. And he was certainly no kind of burden. We all really, you know, he was a one of a kinder, that guy. A great Irish writer. That's, you know, that's kind of my lineage, really. My 2 big influences as an artist were 2 Irish poets named Patrick.
Yeah, so there's 2 of his books here. I can't see this one. Is that Falling in Place?
Falling in Place, yeah.
Waiting for Angels, and then there's the.
Now I think Joy that Cracked the Mountain, which I've called a masterpiece. I just think it's an incredible piece of work. It may be out of print. I'm pretty sure it's out of print. If it's not, it's very close. And reprinting the posthumous writers, smaller artists like us is very rare.
I thought that was a Muses company.
It is a Muses company, yeah.
Because I edited that book.
But so the Boz and Molly in the back of this book is from Joy that Cracked the Mountain. So yes. It's like, it's the closest thing to a reissue of what I think was his very best work. Such a beautiful book. And Boz and Molly, I know, was it was his favorite section. He recited it, and on the CD you could hear Patrick kind of reciting the work. And,
yeah, you can hear Patrick's voice there reading
it's a great voice too.
Quite a fairly long poem.
It's a long poem, yeah.
Because he usually wrote really short ones. And then 8 songs.
8 songs, yeah.
Scott wrote. and put to music using lyrics from Patrick O'Connell's poetry, and also
The writing was in a haze too, like I barely remember doing it, and then I played most of the instruments. Joanna Miller came in and played on a song or two, and yeah, it's a weird blur. And when I hear the recording, it's funny. It's like when you're flipping through old photo albums and you see yourself like drunk at somebody's wedding. You go, oh my God, look at me. When I hear the recording, I still smoked, I still drank heavily. My voice, I don't think it even sounds like me. I think I can perform and sing those songs way better now than I could all those years ago. And so that's another one of the gifts that it gives me. Every time I listen to anything off there, I go, boy, I've really changed my life since that time. And again, this relationship, all this stuff kind of fed into it, you know.
Yeah.
It was a heck of an education to just to experience it. And, I listen to people talk about Charles Bukowski, and it makes me think of Patrick. But Patrick never lost sight of hope and beauty in his work, whereas Bukowski could get pretty over that edge.
And pardon me, any Bukowski fans out there, but egotistical.
Yeah, oh yeah, and Patrick was absolutely not that.
No.
Not that. No. But again, what it is it's just illuminating a dark thing. And the recording of Boz and Molly, in fact, my friend Lance McMaster told me that Patrick had some misgivings about, he's like, geez, I don't want people to remember me as being so dark, because there was no other spoken recordings of him other than this one. And I kind of made the executive decision to let it go out into the world, because it's a very good reading. He reads his work beautifully, that's not a built-in thing with poets. The ability to stand up and read your work really well it's a different talent, and he was very good at that.
He was always writing in his own voice.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah.
And he had that sort of like just a little dying fall sometimes at the end, you know, of the poem. And I don't remember that. You know, like I could do whole Patrick O'Connell poems like with no words at all, because his cadence is just really distinct. Yeah. And that was very similar. I mean, that was his real voice.
Very lyrical.
Yeah.
It's a very lyrical kind of swing to his words. And he could, you know, he played this old Stella guitar, and he kind of finger picked the old blues style. And like I took him to times one time when I introduced him to, you know, Dave and his friends of mine. I'm like, you guys better watch out, this guy's, you know. I was really talking Patrick up, because the one thing that he did that I really thought made his thing was that, you know, this was his writing. He was breaking from the blues tradition by kind of making his poems his lyrics. And I just thought it felt authentic, like the old blues guys to me, like a Mississippi John Hurt, you know. It had that really cool quality. You're right, he was himself very early on, and that's why I wasn't, you know. Most of us we start off as vague impressions of the things we love. I heard recently, you know, we spend the first part of our artistic lives chasing our heroes, and we spend the last part running away from them. And I hear some truth in that, you know, just the other day in relation to this project, somebody remarked online that it made them think of Tom Waits. And at first my shoulders come up. And then I remind myself, wait a second, Tom Waits is unbelievable. To be compared in any kind of manner whatsoever to him, I'm not gonna take that as a slight. But in a way you do, because he was a part of my college, you know. He was one of those, like a Bob Dylan to me. He was somebody that I really paid attention to. And then I had to stop, because I didn't want to become him, you know. It was too easy.
Well, I think for these songs, you know, like, in fact, I asked you about that, because I didn't know how to talk about that, like.
Yeah. I played with that there because it was his work. I had a different kind of permission. It wasn't a Scott Nolan record, so it was the first time I sang in a lower octave voice. And what was interesting for me about that is I sing in kind of a middle range. Arguably, the range I kind of emote in, if you will, is like somewhere near Regina. But as I've gotten older, my comfort place, what makes me feel good, is down here at Hoping for Angels. And so the Patrick stuff allowed me to take the risk of going, okay, I'm gonna abandon this, the only voice I've ever had my whole life. I'm gonna abandon it, and I'm gonna go down here. And I'm gonna sing closer and softer. And I felt like I could do it because we talked about Tom Waits, we talked about Leonard Cohen, so I could invite some of these muses into the room.
Because Patrick loved those
to celebrate
musicians.
him, yeah. But again, it wound up giving me this gift back of going, you know, any voice you choose is your voice. I didn't know that at the time. And thinking of a Bob Dylan, there's somebody that every time he does something, he's changed his voice, and it drives people bananas. And it thrills me to no end that why would you want to stand up and do one thing over and over and over and over and over?
Right.
It seems really. It seems like all the good stuff I get from art is completely destroyed if I have to do that.
Well, and then people do get stuck, right? You can, we all know the author and musicians who are kind of doing the same thing.
I always ask my songwriter friends, what would you take here? If I could lay it on the table and you could actually choose, massive hit. Everybody in the world is going to hear and love this song of yours, but no one will give a damn about anything you do again. Would you take that? Because that happens. That actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a movie recently where there was sort of a big joke about this guy, who was in the movie. It was Hugh Grant, for goodness sakes. But that was the joke of that was his life, right? He had this one hit.
It's very damaging, but it's our culture too. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We put it so high up that it's impossible. It's impossible to.
And nobody thinks to ask, hey, what was your process in writing that, song, or how did you do that?
Or why?
Why, yeah. So maybe we should let these people ask some questions. Sure. If anybody wants to ask Cory a question, or Scott, or
we have 5 minutes left here, so
okay,
that seems fitting.
If you do have a question, just put your hand up and I'll bring the microphone.
This is nerve-wracking because we sit here and go, is anybody going to ask a question here?
I'm wondering if they have another song for us.
Oh, I think that's a fair question. Is that going to be the only question? Because then I can fit the song in.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you all so much for coming to this. I was saying to Cory, no matter how many years you do this, every night you always really wonder, will people show up for this? So thank you for coming to this. And as I said earlier, this project means a lot to me, and that it's me kind of getting to thank an old friend a little bit, which is exciting. I think if I stop talking now, we can do 2 songs, Glenn. I wrote this one because this is kind of the way Patrick liked to play a fingerstyle blues guitar, and that's what kind of informed this song. Yes, I loved it when you came. Open the door and put your lips on my shoulder, and your gun in my drawer. Your fierce, brilliant mouth and eyes, so strong, even your broken teeth look fine, like a yellow leaf. You leaned against the glass crying. All the gods are broken. All the gods are broken. You cry. Into a bottle of cheap brandy and a cardboard hat. Leaning out of the windows at train wheels on the track, and I've been reaching for the sky just like November. Sailors were singing. I remember life could be a dream. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. X shot himself in a phone booth. He had the phone on one ear and a gun on the other. Right in the middle of the conversation, he said, listen to this. Stellazine drinking, blue neon black rain. You were doing all right till you woke opened your mouth, till you opened your mouth. 2 and 20 stars stopped dead. Like blue dust, twilight descends. Yeah, to a pile of cheap brandy in a cardboard hat. I've been leaning out the window, there's a train loose on the tracks, and I've been reaching for the sky, just like November. Singers were singing. I remember life could be a dream, life could be a dream, sweetheart. Forgot how we got all these on. Once again, my good pal Cory Wolchuk on the piano tonight. Thank you. As a slow shake a drum, single sugar bowl. A spoon and fork do a jig. I walk along railroad tracks, blowing kisses to the sound of the wind. I screwed that up. I gotta start over. I'll be mad at myself later if I don't. As my salt shake a drum, single sugar bowl. A spoon and fork do a jig. I belly dance across the room, blowing kisses at you. If you want to be beautiful, you have to laugh. Put a lampshade on your head. Order flowers in from Amsterdam. Throw your feathered hat as far as you can. Watching the stars take this town by surprise. I found my own salvation in the moonless night. There is a light, somehow I knew I belonged to the night. I've been on the shortest day, joy will find a way. From tracks across the moon, the way the sky was then. I walk along the railroad tracks through the roses to the sound of the wind. I'm learning to breathe, and I learn to walk out on desire. As if I were an acrobat in blue, just traveling on a wire. I'm watching the stars take this town by surprise. I found my own salvation in the moonless night. There is a light, somehow I knew I belonged to the night. I've been on the shortest day, joy will find a way. Watching the stars take this town by surprise. I found my own salvation in the moonless night. There is a light, somehow I knew I belonged to the night. I've been on the shortest day, joy will find a way.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Molly Robinson. This is along with my favorite bookstore, and I appreciate everything they do. I make this feel so welcome, and I just appreciate living in a world where there's still bookstores and record stores. So I thank you for coming out and supporting us tonight. Stay home safe.
And now the part you've all been waiting for is that we'll be moving along to the signing portion of the evening. So in just a moment, Scott will move to this chair right here, and we'll be signing copies of his book. Please do feel free to come up and have a copy signed before you pay for it. You don't need to pay for it first, just pay for it before you leave, please. We're so grateful to Signature Editions, Cory Wolchuk, Catherine Hunter, and of course, to Scott Nolan. Please give them a